Bangladesh's atrocities against the Kuki people, a growing crisis of human rights in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. The Kuki people, including the Bam ethnic group, are facing systematic oppression in Bangladesh, particularly in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, CHT, where custodial deaths, torture, and extrajudicial killings have become alarmingly frequent. Recent reports and testimonies indicate that the Bangladesh government and its security forces have engaged in serious human rights abuses with little accountability. Background on the Kuki people. The Kuki, also known as the Bam or Bam people, are one of the many indigenous communities residing in the CHT, a region in southeastern Bangladesh. With historical ties to ethnic groups in India's Mizoram and Myanmar's Chin state, the Kuki people speak dialects from the Sino-Tibetan language family and practice a distinct cultural and religious lifestyle. According to the 2022 Bangladeshi census, the Bam population is just over 13,000, primarily concentrated in the Bandarban district. Despite their deep roots in the region, the Kuki people have long faced marginalization and discrimination. Disputes over land, political disenfranchisement, and cultural erasure have been persistent issues. The 1997 peace accord, aimed at resolving decades of conflict in the CHT, has largely failed to deliver on its promises, especially for smaller ethnic groups like the Kuki. Armed conflict and the rise of the KNF. In recent years, tensions have escalated with the emergence of the Kuki-Chin National Front, KNF, an armed group advocating for the rights and autonomy of the Kuki-Chin peoples. While the KNF claims to represent indigenous interests, it has been accused of involvement in violent incidents, including bank robberies and kidnappings. In April 2024, the KNF was accused of robbing banks in Ruma and Thanchi and abducting a bank manager. In response, the Bangladesh military launched a sweeping crackdown, arresting 49 individuals, many of whom were from the Bam community. These mass arrests were carried out under the pretext of national security, but have drawn sharp criticism for targeting civilians and ethnic minorities without due process. The death of Lalteleing Kimbom in custody. One of the most tragic examples of the government's repression is the death of Lalteleing Kimbom, a 30-year-old Bam man who died in custody on May 15, 2025. Kimbom was one of those arrested during the April 2024 crackdown. He was detained in Chittagong Central Jail, and reports suggest he died while being transported to a hospital. His body showed signs of severe physical trauma, including head injuries, consistent with allegations of torture. Human rights groups and local Kuki leaders have condemned the incident, claiming Kimbom was denied adequate medical care and subjected to prolonged abuse. His death is emblematic of the broader pattern of custodial deaths in Bangladesh, particularly among ethnic minorities who are often deprived of legal representation and fair treatment. Pattern of systemic abuse. The death of Lalteleing Kimbom is not an isolated case. Over the past decade, Bangladesh has witnessed a disturbing rise in custodial deaths, torture, and extrajudicial killings, many of them involving indigenous activists or civilians caught up in military operations. From 2009 to 2023, over 1,000 people died in custody, with reports indicating that torture was frequently used to extract confessions or intimidate detainees. One notable case was the death of indigenous activist Nabayan Chatmamilan in 2022, who died in military custody. Another was that of Sultana Jasmine, a government official who died in Arab custody in 2023 due to alleged torture. These incidents have drawn international condemnation, but have seldom resulted in serious investigations or accountability. Atrocities by the Bangladesh Army in the CHT. Reports from local communities and human rights monitors indicate that the Bangladesh Army has been involved in widespread abuses in the CHT. Military operations targeting the KNF have often resulted in the targeting of unarmed civilians. Entire villages have been raided, homes burned, and individuals tortured or arrested without warrants. In many cases, men from the Kuki community have been detained for extended periods without charge. Eyewitnesses from remote Kuki villages describe soldiers forcibly entering homes, beating residents, and threatening women and children. In some instances, food supplies have been confiscated or destroyed, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. These actions have led to the displacement of hundreds of Kuki-Chin refugees, many of whom have fled to the Indian state of Mizoram, citing fear of military violence and persecution. One such exodus occurred in late 2023, when intensified army operations forced entire Kuki villages to abandon their homes. Refugees reported that the army treated all Kuki people as suspects or sympathizers of the KNF, regardless of any evidence. Schools, churches, and community centers were reportedly occupied or destroyed during raids, further disrupting civil life in the region. Impunity and government denial. Despite the scale and severity of these abuses, the Bangladesh government has consistently denied wrongdoing. Security forces operate with near-complete impunity, shielded by laws that make it nearly impossible to prosecute military personnel for crimes committed during operations. Investigations into custodial deaths and torture are rare, and when they do occur, they often lack transparency. You are watching Lalteleing Media Depth Analysis on Bangladesh. Kuki people struggle in atrocities of Bangladesh government. The government maintains that its actions are necessary to combat terrorism and insurgency in the CHT. However, critics argue that this approach criminalizes entire communities and undermines the rights of indigenous peoples guaranteed under both domestic law and international human rights conventions. Impact on the Kuki community. The ongoing campaign against the KNF has had devastating consequences for the Kuki people. Fear, displacement, and mistrust now dominate daily life in the CHT. With the military presence increasing, the Kuki are unable to live freely in their own land. Access to education, healthcare, and employment is severely restricted, and the constant threat of violence looms over villages. Community leaders have expressed concern that their culture and identity are under siege. Young people are increasingly reluctant to speak out, fearing retribution. The death of Lalteleing Kimbom has become a rallying point for Kuki activists who demand justice and international intervention to protect their rights. International and domestic reactions. International human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, have called for independent investigations into custodial deaths and the treatment of ethnic minorities in Bangladesh. The U.S. Department of State has documented these abuses in its annual human rights reports, highlighting the lack of accountability and transparency within Bangladesh's justice system. Within the country, civil society groups and journalists have raised alarms, though many face pressure or censorship. Protests following high-profile deaths, such as those of Sultana Jasmine and Lalteleing Kimbom, have occasionally prompted judicial inquiries, but these seldom lead to prosecutions or policy change. The death of Lalteleing Kimbom is a stark reminder of the Bangladesh government's oppressive treatment of its indigenous communities, particularly the Kuki people. The use of torture, arbitrary detention, and military violence under the guise of national security has created a climate of fear and injustice in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. Unless urgent reforms are undertaken and accountability enforced, the Kuki community will continue to suffer under state-sanctioned oppression. The international community must increase pressure on Bangladesh to respect the rights of its indigenous peoples and to end the atrocities that have become all too common in the hills of the Southeast. Thank you for watching. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button, and again, we request you to share this video. Thank you again for staying with us till the end of this video. Lalteleing Media.
National Army No full state. No full state. No full state.
Kuki-Chin National Army is demanding a full-fledged state. No full state, no rest. At the below we can see the demand map of Kuki-Chin state.
Kuki-Chin state demand land Chittagong Hill Tracts of Bangladesh.
No full state. No full state. No full state.
The slogans of Kuki-Chin National Army, they are demanding full-fledged states inside the Chittagong Hill Tracts of Bangladesh.